Hi everyone. I wanted to do a little activity together with you. It's actually a story that we're going to do, but just like when we're in our speech class, I like to have an agenda, and we always start by pre-reading the questions before we even start the story so that we can already be thinking about what we should be listening for, what the main parts of the story might be. So we're going to read the story second, and as we're reading it, we're thinking about the questions and how we can prove those answers. And then third, we're going to actually answer the questions, and if we can go right back into the story and we can actually find the proof right there in the story. So the story that we're going to do is Fletcher and the Springtime Blossoms by Julia Rawlinson and Tiffany Beek. And if we go back to our agenda, it said that we want to pre-read our questions. So it says right here, what were the animals doing when we met them? So we have birds, rabbits, a fox, and porcupine. So we're going to be listening for, we're going to name the animals and fill out the gaps with the words from the box below. Draw a line matching the animals to the correct sentences. So somebody was doing something with the flowers, and then another type of animal, I know it's going to be two or more because it says were, and then something on the branch. Porcupine, they already told us who we're looking for, was doing something in his, and we're going to find where he was. Rabbits were doing something down the hill next to their burrow. So we're going to be thinking about those questions. And then the second thing we're going to be doing is to summarize the story, because after we finish the story next week, I want to use the same story and we're going to go a little bit deeper with it. So we're going to think about somebody who is the main character of the story. And there's already a really big clue because it's called Fletcher and the Springtime Blossoms, and it has a picture of a fox here. So we're already thinking about what it might be. What did the character want? What problem was in the way? So what did the character do to solve the problem? And then how was the problem solved? All right, really good questions. So Fletcher and this, oh, you know what? Forgot, just like in speech class, once we're finished with a job, we're gonna kind of put a check mark next to it. We finished pre-reading our questions. And now it's time for us to read the story. And as we're reading, we're thinking about those questions. Okay. The woods were full of the chirping, bustling, sing-song sounds of spring. Fletcher bounced along with his nose in the air, sniffing the just burst buds of flowers and playing chase with butterflies, with his head spinning with sights and sounds. He tumbled happily down the hill into his sunny orchard, but when he picked himself up from the ground, he couldn't believe his eyes. A soft breeze danced through the branches, carrying snowflakes. Snow so late in spring, thought Fletcher. It will be too cold for the buds and butterflies. There's no time to lose. Uh-oh, he seems worried. Looking for someone to tell, he trotted back up the hill and passed a pair of birds cuckooing on branches. So here already are birds, and I remember hearing that, and they were asking us what they were doing, and I hear the word cuckooing. So we're going to actually look on our graphic organizer, and there's cuckooing. So I think we may have found one answer. You've flown to your summer home too soon, Fletcher cried. I've been down to the orchard, and there's more snow on the way. Then we should fly back south, they called. But first we must tell Porcupine. He's just come out of his bed of leaves. He needs to snuggle back down or he'll freeze. What a great group of friends. They're looking out for each other. I love that. Fletcher and the birds found Porcupine stretching and scratching. There's snow on the way, panted Fletcher. I saw it in the orchard. It will be too cold for the butterflies. The birds will need to fly south, and you must hide away. So here's Porcupine, and they said scratching. So here I see stretching And I think that was, yep, stretching and scratching, some of the words that they used in the story. So there's some more proof. Then I should crawl back into my bed, snuffled Porcupine sadly. But first, we must tell Squirrel that he needs to hunt for food. He's eaten his winter store of nuts. He'll need to find some more. Fletcher, the birds, and Porcupine found Squirrel scampering after sunbeams. Snow is blowing in from the orchard, gasped Fletcher. It will be too cold for the butterflies. The birds will need to fly south. Poor Porcupine must go back to bed, and you must find some food. You're right, I've eaten my spring feast, said Squirrel, and all my stores are gone. But before I hunt for more, we need to tell the rabbits to munch as much grass as they can before the snow falls. They're such a great group of friends. I love this. Fletcher, the birds, Porcupine, and Squirrel hurried off again. The rabbits were rolling down the hill next to their burrows. And there's another word. I remember hearing about rabbits right here. And on the bottom, I think, is there, yep, the word rolling. Let me see if I could only have another hand. Here's rolling. So I think we're proving some answers as we're going. So the rabbits were rolling down the hill next to the burrow. Stop playing, cried Fletcher. There's snow blowing in from the orchard. It will be too cold for the butterflies. The birds will need to fly south. Poor Porcupine must get back to bed. Squirrel needs to find food, and you must munch more grass. Before we eat, said the rabbits, staggering dizzily to their feet. Let's go and play in the snow. So the rabbits hoppity-rolled, polly-plopped down the hill. Through the woods, they were chased by Squirrel, Porcupine, and birds, and a bouncy, full of importance fox all the way to the orchard, where the ground was white with blossoms bobbing in the branches, blossoms blowing in the breeze, blossoms blanketing the ground, and not a snowflake to be found. Those are blossoms, not snow, you foolish fox, the animals cried. Fletcher blinked and rubbed his eyes, feeling very silly. But then the animals scooped up paws and clawfuls of blossoms from the ground and covered him with in a tickly shower of fluttering white petals. Fletcher and his friends ran and played between the trees until at last they all collapsed in a blossomy, soft white heap. That sounds like fun. Then the birds fluttered back into their branches with beakfuls of blossoms to line their nests. Porcupine snuffled off up the slopes, his quills dotted with tiny white petals. Squirrel went chasing up and down trees after snow-white petals dancing in the breeze, and the rabbits bounced back up the hill with blossoms to brighten their burrows. But Fletcher just lay smiling in the soft bed of petals, watching the blooming branches bobbing overhead. There he is, just enjoying the moment. That's an awesome story. Sounds like fun. So we pre-read the questions, we read the story, and we were thinking about our questions, and we even commented or kind of were trying to prove them as we were going. So I'm going to check that we did that. And now all we have to do is answer the questions, and we can even go back into the story to really prove that they were there. Okay. So it says, what were the animals doing when we met them? And I'm going to read the directions again so you remember what our job is. Name the animals and fill in the gaps with the words from the box below. Draw a line to match the animal to the correct sentence. So we're going to say something was somewhere, the flowers. So something was, let's see, in the flowers. So I'm going to go back and think, where do we see the flowers initially in the story? And here I see the word right at the beginning. We have Fletcher, and he's sniffing the just burst buds of flowers. So here I'm going to put Fletcher and he was sniffing, and I'm going to cross it off because that way I'll know I don't need that word again. Sniffing the flowers, and I'm going to take his picture and put a little arrow up to the top so that I know that part is done. And then remember I said that this is were, which means we know that there's going to be more than one. Some couple of animals were doing something on a branch. Well, I know bunnies are not on a branch, but I'm pretty sure birds are. So let's see what the birds were doing. We can go back and find those birds. And here it says that the birds were cuckooing on the branch. So I'm going to find right here and do capital because it's the beginning of a sentence. Birds were, and here's cooing. And I could cross it off on the branch, and I'm going to make the arrow go right over here. And they already told us who we're looking for here. It's Porcupine. Let's see, what was Porcupine doing? So I'm going to go back into my story. Oh, I remember. We talked about this. He was stretching and scratching. And here I see the word stretching. So I'm going to write that in there. And he is in his burrow. So I could cross that off, and I'm going to make the line go up to that one. And it already told us who we're thinking about. Rabbits were, and I remember them rolling down the mountain. Let's see if I'm right. And it says right here, rabbits were rolling down the hill next to their burrow. So I'm going to write the word rolling right there and make my arrow go down to that section. All right, now the next thing I wanted to do was summarize the story, because we're going to use this again next week when we go back to the story and go a little bit deeper. So it says somebody, who is the main character of the story? And we talked about this a little bit because we said we had a really big clue by the fact that his picture's on the front cover and the title of it is Fletcher. So we know that Fletcher is the main character. And what did the character want? So as he went to each of his friends, he was doing something to kind of warn them. He was telling them, get back, spring isn't here officially yet. We want to be careful it's not too cold with the snow coming. So Fletcher was warning his friends. He definitely seems like a nice friend himself. And so what problem got in the way? I remember as he went to each of his friends, they then thought of somebody else that they wanted to warn. So it kind of took longer than I think he had intended. His friends also wanted to warn other friends. Which, if you think about it, it doesn't really seem like a big problem. It's almost a good thing that they were all working together. So what did the character do to solve the problem? So it kind of happened by chance, but it seemed like they all, once they got together, they couldn't help themselves and they all wanted to play. So they all played together one more time until ... And then this is the good part. It says then, how was the problem solved? Once they started playing together and they went down to the orchard, what did they realize? That it actually wasn't snow. So they realized it wasn't no, they didn't need to be worried. It was blossoms on the trees. So they got to enjoy the day together, and then they brought the blossoms back to their homes, which was awesome. So I'm going to show you back to our agenda. Kind of got smudged, sorry everybody. But here we got to answer our questions, and we went back and we even proved it in our story where we found our answers. So I want to thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the story. I'm going to use it again next week so we can do a little bit more with this story, go a little bit deeper. Thanks so much, and be well. Stay healthy, everybody.